everyone, welcome to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird, here to do the second part of my three-part Halloween comic book review series. The first part we did, as you can see here, Halloween Night Dance, these 4 issues right here. The third part will be Halloween, the death of Laurie, or the first death of Laurie Strode. I always screw that up for some reason. Issues 1 and 2, because issue 3 never came out. But today, we are going to be talking about Halloween, 30 Years of Terror. Look at that perspective. That's a pretty good angle right there. Now this, obviously, considering this year is the 40th anniversary of 1978's Halloween and the release of 2018's upcoming Halloween, this right here was written 10 years ago. It came out 10 years ago. Who knows? It might have been written a year before that. But this is, again, written by Stephen Hutchinson, who wrote the Halloween Night Dance series, as well as wrote the Halloween First Death of Laurie Strode comic books, so these all do somewhat tie together. This one, though, is just a single issue. It is an oversized issue, and the reason I'm covering it by itself is because it's an anthology. It is 5 different stories set in the different timelines of the Halloween universe, I should say. I say universes because I kind of tip my cap on one of the, or tip my hand on one of the stories here. You'll see what I mean. But the first story is called Trick or Treat, and the way this one ties in is this is the story of Mary and her husband, who is an older couple that were in Haddonfield on Halloween night 1978. And the story starts off, they're talking about how they never really answer the door, or at least Mary is thinking about how they never really answered the door back in those days until that fateful Halloween night when something happened that made them go ahead and answer the door. Now, the artwork in this first issue is done by, it's drawn by Danijel Zezelj. Oh man, that's harsh. I'm gonna go ahead and give proper accreditation right here. These are all the stories and the artists. So you can see Trick or Treat drawn by Danijel Zezelj, colored by Nick Bell. POV drawn by Jim Daly, colored by Rob Ruffalo. Visiting Hours illustrated by Brett Weldelay, who actually is one of the people that we got a piece of art from in one of our unboxings. Tommy and the Boogeyman, drawn by Jeffrey Zornow and Lee Ferguson, and colored by Jeffrey Zornow and Rob Ruffalo. Repetition Compulsion is the last story, drawn by Tim Seeley, the same person that drew Halloween Night Dance, and colored by Elizabeth John. So, that's all the proper accreditation. So Trick or Treat, again, is the story of Mary and her husband on Halloween night, 1978. It's interesting art, this one. It is something, this artist has actually gained popularity, and he has done other things in the Marvel Universe, I believe. I'm not sure where else, but basically what happens is the people knocking on their door are little Tommy Jarvis and little Lisa Wallace from the very first Halloween movie. When Laurie says, go run and get help, this is the house that they go and start banging on in the movie. We never really see what happens after that, but it is them answering the door. So that's Mary answering Tommy and Lisa right there, and boom, so they let them in. Now, while Mary is calling, we get an appearance by Michael Myers. Now, how does this fit in, right? Because Michael is busy attacking Laurie when immediately after she sends the kids away. So, what is this appearance? When does this happen? My best Jeff Goldblum said. My best Jeff Goldblum says that this story actually takes place after he disappears off of the Doyle's front lawn, and before he appears in the back alley at the beginning of Halloween 2. That's where this takes place. So that's what's interesting about this story. It is, again, in continuity, but it's a moment of Michael Myers that we didn't get to see in the movies. And then the story continues it actually flashes forward a number of years later, and unfortunately we see that that her husband is no longer with her, but she still answers the door to this day. Unfortunately, this time something weird happens, and the candy that she hands out, one of the kids eats, and there's a razor blade in it. And then she turns around and she sees this. Michael just sitting in a chair, and then she looks at the candy and she sees all of the razor blades in the candy. The kids are basically there looking at her, and then she looks back and Michael's gone. And that's the end of the story. It's a weird, ambiguous ending, but it is still an interesting story to see. It fills in the gap of where Tommy and Lisa went that night. So that's story number 1. Story number 2 is called POV. Now, the weird thing about this one is I didn't really get it. This isn't an in-continuity thing. This is in continuity in the comic books. This story, after doing a little bit of research, this story actually takes place between 2 later Halloween short stories, or at least this is referenced in 2 later Halloween short stories written by the same author that have yet to be collected. So I don't actually have those short stories, but this is its own story. It is a wordless, completely dialogueless story. It's told in pictures only, but it's told from both the POV of a woman being crowned as a beauty queen, as well as so one side of each. So here we go. I'll show you. So this side is always the POV of Michael Myers. This side is always the POV of the beauty queen after she wins. So every single page is just that. So we see her POV as she looks in the mirror and sees the shape behind her. We see his POV as he gets behind her before she sees him in the mirror. And then we see what happens after that, which is a very aggressive and gory attack by a really awesome looking Michael Myers. So this is a short and sweet. God, I'm just gonna show you the last page just real quickly because it's dope. So anyway, that's that story. It's a really short and sweet, not really in movie continuity, but that's the only one that's not really in movie continuity. But it is an interesting one, and the artwork is cool, and I do like the way that they portrayed it via the 2 different POVs. It's supposed to be reminiscent of the POV sequence in the very first movie when he is stalking his sister and then kills her. It's just meant to be the POV of both the victim and Michael side by side. So I thought that was a really interesting exercise and a successful one, quite frankly. The next story is called Visiting Hours, and this is the story that tells basically it bridges the gap between Halloween H2O and Halloween Resurrection for Laurie Strode. Basically what happens is we hear we read a voiceover that is Laurie Strode as she reminisces about when she was a child and growing up, all these weird things that happened to her. She remembers back. She basically is having these what-if scenarios on the first page here, and you can see the artwork. It's pretty cool. It's pretty interesting. It's kind of reminiscent of Ben Templesmith in the 30 Days of Night series, but a little bit more colored and stuff like that. Basically, this is what if I didn't drop the keys off at the Myers house that day? How different. He would never have known that I was his, that he would never have found me. I never would have gone through any of this. My friends would have never died. What would have happened? And so she flashes forward in her brain, and she's now older. And then the next page, she flashes forward again to where she has a son, and she's the headmistress of a private academy. But she starts to see things, and she starts to be reminded that she hasn't been making the right decisions. And then she sees a vision of her friend getting stabbed through the chest. And this right here is a really, really awesome representation of Michael coming at her from the shadows. I'm trying to get it in the right light so you guys can see it. There you go. That is very cool from Brett Weldelay right there. I really dig on that piece of Michael Myers art. And then, yeah, so it continues on, and she has this vision of herself being, stabbed by Michael, and then it flashes back to her in Grace Anderson's sanitarium here, and she's got her rag doll that she had in the movies, and yeah, so that's sort of how it bridges the gap. And it basically, what's interesting is this story tells, she imagines how different her life would have been had she never run afoul of Michael Myers, and now she can't even sleep without Michael ruining her dreams. It actually very much gives her a reason for having the death wish that she does, that's so out of nowhere in Halloween Resurrection. So I actually really appreciate the story for that. I was surprised that that's what this was doing, but I'm like, oh man, by the end of it, I'm like, wow, now I kind of I feel for her way more in Resurrection, and even though it's still bad writing, this excused it a little bit more, and so I really dig on this story as a result. That leads me to story number 4. Story number 4 is called Tommy and the Boogeyman. Now, this was a cool one. This is a grown-up Tommy Doyle right here, and he is being yelled at by his wife. He is a comic book artist, and he has a son named Jamie, which comes into play later. But basically, he draws a comic, and one of the ones they find, basically his wife is mad for leaving his comic around because their son found it, and it's too adult for him. So we get to see a glimpse of what that comic is, and it's Tarantula Man #1. And you see the artwork is the classic old school black and white, like in the old horror cult books and all the serials and the pulp books and things like that. And then you see the bad guy, which is Tarantula Man, as he's sniffing panties. How creepy is that? Sniff. And so she discovers him, and then he attacks, and it is super creeptastic, and she runs into all the webs and everything, but then her friend walks in on it and finds this right here, like, oh man, she's been disrobed and he's eating her and sucking her, and then stuff starts to come out of her, and it's just this really, really cool story. I'm like, oh, this has nothing to do with Michael Myers, but what ends up happening is here at the end, you see Tommy Doyle smiling at his comic, and then he's like, you know what? And he starts to draw, and I did a little bit of research on this because you can see that's Jamie Lloyd right there, or not, because you can see that's Jamie right there, and that's Michael, and that's the thorn mark. So basically what's happened is Tommy Doyle from the Halloween 1 and 2 universe is writing a story, an alternate universe, where there's a niece that Michael Myers stalks named Jamie, named after Tommy Doyle's son, and he's cursed with the thorn. So, like, all of the garbage in the later Halloween movies, or what a lot of people call the garbage in the later Halloween movies, is all an alternate universe created by Tommy Doyle, the little boy from the very first movie. I really like this story for that. I think that's really cool. I don't know that a lot of people would have picked up on that. So I'm really hyped on this one issue. Quite honestly, it's really cool. The last issue, or the last story, I should say, is the one called Repetition Compulsion. Now this one starts off innocently enough with this teacher who is basically telling her young students, if you ever get sad or upset, there's one thing you can always do, and that's smile, and all the evil will go away. And then we show that this takes place sometime after Halloween 2, sometime in between maybe 4 and 5, I'm not really sure. But it takes place with Marion Chambers. And I know that she only appeared in Halloween 1, 2, and H2O, and I think Resurrection 2, I'm not sure. I don't remember her being in 4 or 5. But this is the Loomis that's got the scarring. So it's definitely after 2. And what's happened is he's in here and he's totally engrossed in his work, and apparently the mask that he has been moved by Michael, and it's now pointing at the map on the wall, and there's a new pin in it with a picture of a dog. And he's like, son of a bitch, Michael came here. And so we cut back to the school as they're driving to go to the school. That's Loomis and that's Marion Chambers. And then this is the teacher, and of course we see Michael, the shape, coming and grabbing her from behind. And then Loomis and Marion are trying to find whatever the clue was left about. And here's Michael right inside as she's reaching out. And there's this really haunting panel here where you see the teacher reaching out, trying to get their attention. Michael right here just holding her, and then not being able to get to them. And then they find yet another victim of Michael Myers, another dog victim of Michael Myers. This one says he's not fully dead at this point, but he's about to be. And so yet another pet that Michael decided to kill just to make a point. And then of course he does indeed take out the teacher, and all is not well. And Loomis wakes up to hear the next morning that something has happened, and there is a victim from the exact same time that he was at the school. And then we see that the teacher, of course, Michael's sick, twisted sense of humor shows up again in this comic, because he has made sure that she's smiling in her rictus grin here. So I think that's kind of cool too. Even though I can't place exactly where this happens, just when Loomis is working with Marion Chambers, I like that he is using his sense of humor. This lady is talking about how just smile and everything will be okay, and then he strings her up and has her smiling in this horrific rictus grin that's made by barbed wire. Really, really cool stuff. So I really like this issue. Halloween, 30 Years of Terror. I don't know if it would be easy or hard for you guys to get. I understand Night Dance is really hard to get your hands on, so I don't know if this would be any easier. I know Laurie Strode is hard to get to, so I'm guessing this one's probably hard too. But hey, now I just pretty much showed you everything, so you don't really need to get it if you don't want to. But I know that a lot of you guys are like me, and you're going to need to have it now. And I don't blame you. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and call that there. I'm going to put that one right there for now. That'll replace Laurie Strode for part 3 of my Halloween comics reviews. I'll be doing the first death of Laurie Strode, issues 1 and 2, because issue 3 has still not come out here over 10 years later. So I'll touch on that in that review as well. Thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you're enjoying these Halloween comics reviews and breakdowns. I can't speak, Sis. Anyway, I do appreciate it, you guys. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much to our patrons for supporting the channel. Consider joining down below. You can actually, if you want, we have people requesting movies and movie reviews and movie commentaries. Who knows? If you want to request a comic to review, feel free to do that too if you want to join the Patreon. I would appreciate it if you did. Thank you guys very much for watching. Until next time, remember, stay scared.